all the recordings will be played only once. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a client who wants to rent short-term accommodation and a rental agent. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first. Good morning. Ace Accommodation. How can I help you?
Good morning. I'd like to organise some short stay accommodation on the Gold Coast, please.
Certainly. Who am I speaking to?
Miss McKinley. Sylvia McKinley.
Could you spell your family name for me, please?
It's MACKINLAY.
The client's family name is McKinley, so McKinley has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5. Good morning. Ace Accommodation. How can I help you?
Good morning. I'd like to organise some short stay accommodation on the Gold Coast, please.
Certainly. Who am I speaking to?
Miss McKinley. Sylvia McKinley.
Could you spell your family name for me, please?
It's MACKINLAY.
Thank you. And your first name is Sylvia?
Yes.
Is that with an I or a Y?
A Y, the old-fashioned way. That's SYLVIA.
Thank you, Miss McKinley. Now, just for our records, can you tell me what country you live in?
Of course. It's England, actually.
I thought so. Now, when are you coming?
Well, at the moment, we're planning on arriving on July the 26th.
Oh, the 25th. That's the last day of the public holiday, and it might be difficult to find something available on that date.
No, we're coming on the 26th of July.
Oh, well, that's fine then. We'll have lots of good places vacant by then, although you wouldn't be able to move in until late afternoon, because our cleaning crew will need time to get everything ready for you.
That suits us. Our flight won't get in until early evening anyway.
How many of you will there be?
Just my sister and myself.
And how long do you intend to stay for?
Oh, only a couple of weeks. We'd like to stay longer, but we'll have to get back to work.
So, you're not coming on business then?
No, it's just a holiday. Why? What difference does that make?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Business people have different needs. You know, wireless internet, even fax machines and photocopiers.
No, we won't need any of that stuff. We'll be coming to relax and get away from all that kind of thing.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10. Good. Now, what exactly are you looking for? A house, a duplex, or an apartment?
What's a duplex?
Oh, that's what you might call a townhouse or a unit. You know, 2 houses semi-detached on the same property.
Oh, I see. I think an apartment will suit us just fine.
And how many bedrooms? 2.
1 or 2, it depends on the size. My sister and I don't mind sharing if it's a decent-sized bedroom with 2 beds.
Well, that makes it easier. And car parking? Will you require a lock-up garage? They're a little harder to find with an apartment.
We'll have a hire car, and as far as I know, there are no regulations concerning car parking. I think as long as it's not parked on the street and it's secure, there shouldn't be any problems.
OK. Now, I'm assuming you want something by the beach.
Yes, that's the idea. We want to enjoy the surf, sand and sunshine.
OK, but before we settle on an area and discuss your price range, I'll need to know about other necessities.
What do you mean?
Well, for example, do you want to be close to a shopping mall or the casino or the fun parks? Or do you want to be in a complex with or near a swimming pool?
No, none of that really matters to us. But we'd like to have reasonable access to the motorway so that we can drive up to Brisbane to visit friends there.
Well, there are quite a few lovely small towns to choose from. There's Main Beach, which is north of Surfer's Paradise, or Mermaid Waters, which is a bit further south, or Palm Beach, which is quite a bit further south.
Mermaid Waters sounds delightful. Is it close to the motorway?
Well, not really. The M1 is actually closest to Palm Beach, and prices are likely to be more reasonable there too.
That's settled then. Palm Beach it is.
Now, if you'll just give me your email address, I can send you information about the town and lots of photos.
Well, my email is smac13@hotmail.com.
And one final thing. How much are you looking to spend per week on accommodation? Do you want something at the luxury end of the market? You know, newly redecorated, great views, all the mod cons?
Not necessarily. Could we get something clean, comfortable and reasonable for $1,200 a week?
Could you stretch that to $1,500 a week? I've got a property in mind that you'll absolutely love, but you'd have to go to $1,500. $1,200 wouldn't cover it.
All right then, but that's our top limit.
Good. I'll get onto this straight away, and there should be something in your inbox shortly. That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear an extract from a radio program. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen and complete the notes by filling in the numbered spaces 11 to 14.
Hello and welcome to Cooking Capers. And this week we're looking at that most versatile and aromatic of plants, a fairly recent addition to the list of Australian agricultural produce, but nevertheless a great favourite today, ginger. And in the studio to tell us all about it is Monica Maxwell.
Ginger, is one of my personal favourite spices, and I've got a number of wonderful recipes to share with you later on in the program. So what is ginger? Well, actually, it's a spicy-tasting root with an aromatic flavour. It's related to the bamboo family and has 100 different uses in the kitchen. The Chinese have cultivated it for years, particularly to use in medicine, though you're probably more familiar with its culinary uses. But first, let's take a brief look at its history before we look at how it can be used, because it's had a very interesting history. Ginger originated in the southern provinces of China and in India, where it had been used in medicines and food preparation for over 5,000 years. The early traders who came upon the plant took it to many parts of the world, such as Nigeria, the West Indies, Central America, East Africa, and even Indonesia. Ginger became extremely popular because of its exotic aromatic properties and was highly valued by spice traders in the 17th and 18th centuries because they were able to sell it back in Europe for a very good price. Although Australia is now the largest producer of ginger in the world, it wasn't grown in Australia until the early 20th century.
Now look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and complete the table and the fact sheet by filling in numbered spaces 15 to 20.
Apparently, some pieces of raw ginger found their way to an area about 100 kilometres north of Brisbane in Queensland earlier this century. The comparatively high rainfall and humidity in this area produced conditions which are perfect for growing ginger. So it became well established. But in the early days, the relatively high cost of production placed it at a disadvantage in the market by comparison with the much cheaper ginger produced by other countries with lower production costs. Then, in 1941, the supply of ginger to Australia started to run out. Remember, this was in the middle of the Second World War, when everything was in short supply. This provided the perfect opportunity for the Queensland growers to expand their production and sales. 5 local farmers got together and formed a cooperative association in a place called Buderim. They started with only £25 between them. That was in the days when Australian currency was pounds, not dollars. So they set up the company with 2 wooden vats and 14 tons of raw ginger. But they went on to become the most successful ginger farmers in the world. In fact, nearly all the world's ginger now comes from the Buderim Ginger Factory in Queensland. 40% of the production is used in Australia, and the remaining 60% is exported overseas to places like Europe, North America, South Africa, and even to Asia, where it originated in the first place. So now let's move on to looking at ways of using ginger in the kitchen.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Of section 2. Test 3, section 3. You will hear 3 students discussing a programme of activities for new students at a college. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
So you were both on last year's orientation course then? How did it go?
I loved it. The activities were well organised and I met people from all over the world.
Yes, it was useful.
And you think I should sign up for this year's course?
Yes, definitely. Apart from being fun, it really does prepare you for all the things you have to do in your first couple of weeks. In fact, One of the most useful things was chatting to people who'd already been there for a year, so-called senior students. They'd been on the orientation course the year before last and recommended it to us. Oh, and there was a great atmosphere at the formal dinner too. It was so colourful, with people in their traditional dress from Asia, Africa, South America. It was one of the high points of the whole week.
That was right at the end, of course. The first thing they did on the Monday was take us on a guided tour of the Students' Union.
And after that, they took us round the city centre, showing us things like the bus station, the main shops.
And the best pubs.
Right, so it was very worthwhile.
Yes, though maybe they could have taken us to a better nightclub. The music at the place we went to was lousy.
That's a matter of taste, surely. Well, anyway, the next day they showed us around everything on the campus.
And believe me, it was everything. We must have walked miles. I could have done with less information on every building in sight, given that I'll probably never need to go into half of them, and a bit more on places everyone's likely to use at some time or other, like the sports block, the health centre, the bicycle and car parks.
Which reminds me, there was an afternoon session on how to drive in this country, which seemed to me a bit weird, you know, for a university course.
I suppose it's because there have been accidents involving students who aren't used to people driving on the left. I was there, actually.
How was it?
Well, I must say I was a bit disappointed. There were some useful driving tips, but it might have been more helpful if it had included stuff for pedestrians. How to avoid getting run over, for example.
You didn't go to the session on safety then?
No.
Well, apparently that dealt with road safety for pedestrians, along with lots of other aspects, of course. I wasn't there myself, but that might be something worth going to, Julia.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
I like the sound of the whole thing. Tell me, what's the accommodation like? Do you have a room to yourself, or do you have to share? What do you have to take with you?
For the orientation course, you'll have an individual room in one of the halls of residence. That'll be a different hall from the one you're booked into for the year, but they're both on the campus, so you won't have far to go.
And you won't have to take much with you. The room will have chairs, table, wardrobe, bed, mattress, blankets, sheets and so on.
Take a warm coat or jacket, though. It may well rain, and it's unlikely to reach even 20 degrees in late September.
But it shouldn't drop below about 10, at least during the day, which is something, I suppose.
Right. Now, I know they can't do much about the weather, but did you have the feeling that they were looking after you on the course?
Yes, we did. There were some little touches that showed they'd thought about what it was like to be starting a course of study abroad.
Such as?
Well, it's just a small example, but they gave us free email access to contact people at home. 30 minutes, if I remember correctly.
Actually, I think it was 20.
Yes, you're right. I was on for over half an hour and paid for an extra 10 or 15 minutes. Not that it was much.
Emails don't take long to write anyway.
No, they don't.
So, just one more thing. The timetable. When does the course actually start and finish?
Well, a lot of people get there on the Sunday, though you'd have to find a room for an extra night, as the course accommodation is only booked from the Monday, when things get going.
Then they'll keep you busy all week until the dinner on the Friday.
And that's it, is it?
Yes, there's nothing after that.
Though most people stay over till Saturday, partly to recover from the party, but also because they can then move straight into their permanent rooms.
I think I'll do that. Well, thanks a lot for all your advice. I'm sure I'll enjoy the course.
I wish I could go on this year's too.
That is the end of section 3.
Section 4. You are going to hear a lecture on life at work, which is being given as part of a series of lectures on productivity and work practices. First, look at questions 31 to 35. As you can see, there are 4 alternative answers, A, B, C and D, for each question. Decide which alternative is the most suitable answer and circle the correct letter.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Charles Butt, and I shall be giving you a series of lectures on productivity and work practices over the coming weeks. There will be 10 lectures in the mornings as part of this course, and in addition there will be 3 lectures in the evenings from 6 to 8, which will be given by outside speakers. I would like first to look at a recent report on life at work. The report shows that the average British worker takes less than half an hour for lunch, 27 minutes to be precise, and that sick leave is on the increase. The drop in the length of time spent on lunch was 9 minutes when compared to last year, down from 36 minutes. According to the report, this is the first time that the average lunch break has fallen below half an hour. As regards sick leave, you can see that the average figure is 10 days per year. That's up by 1 day in 2002 compared to 2001. While physical illness was given as the most common reason for absence in the case of non-manual workers, stress was the most common cause of long-term absence. It's worth noting here that 9 out of 10 workers claim that stress is a problem in their organisation, and that 8 out of 10 bosses are feeling more stressed than ever before. I would just like to say here that we will be looking at the stress in work and study at a later date. And we'll be looking particularly at ways of dealing with it in studying, particularly for exams. You can see from the calendar that Professor Appleyard will be giving a lecture on this topic the week after next. The report also says that just below 50% of workers claim that they were taking less time off for holidays than they were entitled to. I'm not sure that this will be believed by the employers. Previous surveys have suggested that about 1/3 of days that have been taken by workers as days off sick were regarded by bosses as not being the result of genuine illness. Some more hard data is required to corroborate both these claims.
Before the speaker continues, look at questions 36 to 40. As you listen, answer questions 36 to 40.
All this suggests that employers are driving their workers too hard. The effects of overworking mean that workers are now being stretched beyond their limits, both physically and mentally. This is borne out by the increase in sick leave. However, looked at from the employer's point of view, the picture may not be the same. Employers say that workers protest too much, but bearing in mind the data about the number of bosses feeling much more stress than before, we need to think about this carefully. It's interesting to note that productivity has gone up in many areas of industry. In 2001, the local car plant had one of the sharpest increases in average productivity, with the number of vehicles per employee rising by over 30% a year. A new assembly line came into operation at the beginning of 2002, affecting productivity, which increased to the 100 vehicles per worker mark by the end of the year. This is a stunning achievement for an industry which was not long ago considered to be collapsing. It would be interesting to do a survey of the work life at the plant. Those of you who have opted to do the project and reduce the number of essays you have to do may want to look into this. Please see me at the end of the lecture. Right, now, let us move on to something else which I think...
That's the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.